Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Friday Ramblings, and we've got a special treat for you this week because we're delving into a oft-forgotten but plot-significant part of WWF history, and that is the stable known as the Machines. Why are the Machines significant? Did they win a bunch of championships? No. Did they run rampant over the roster for years and years on time? Nope. So what makes it significant? Well, simple. It was part of the major stories going on in the company for approximately a year and helped set up one of the most famous matches of all time. What are we referring to? Well, you're going to find out in just a momento as we break down the history of the Machines. Now, the Machines was a professional wrestling stable who, as we said before, performed in the World Wrestling Federation, of course now known as WWE, in 1986. The team consisted of already highly popular WWF wrestlers working under masks which strongly resembled that worn by Super Strong Machine from New Japan Pro Wrestling. This was, in fact, an intentional reference, as the leader of the Machines, Andre the Giant, had in 1984 worked with Super Strong Machine, as well as a few Super Strong Machine impersonators, and liked the idea of the masks. Thus, it was co-opted and done in its own unique way by WWF. Let's get to the background. Previous to this, Andre the Giant had been feuding with Big John Studd and Bobby Heenan due to Studd's place in the Heenan family. They were feuding over who was the true giant of wrestling and had already had encounters at WrestleMania 2. Ultimately, though, Andre the Giant found himself in a little bit of a scheduling conflict as he had been cast to be in the movie The Princess Bride. So, the WWF kind of needed a way to explain Andre taking an extended absence from TV in the middle of what seemed to be a hot angle following WrestleMania. Thus, the storyline was written where the Heenan family challenged Andre and a partner of his choice to face Big John Studd and fellow Heenan family member King Kong Bundy in a tag team match on April 26, 1986. When Andre did not show and was replaced by strongman Ted Arcidi, Bobby Heenan launched a campaign to get him suspended from the WWF, claiming that Andre was not living up to his contractual obligations. Besides taking time off from The Princess Bride, Andre was going to use the time to have major back surgery. And thus, this was going to be, as I said before, an extended absence from TV. Jack Tunney, WWF on-screen authority figure at the time, was forced to go along with Heenan's request and suspend Andre. Thus, Andre goes off, fulfills his non-wrestling obligations. When it's time for him to return to his wrestling priorities, though, instead, vignettes appeared on WWF television, hailing the debut of a masked tag team from the Orient known as the Machines. Specifically, Giant Machine and Super Machine. The team announced they were coming to America with their manager Lou Albano, who had already been established as the manager of great tag teams, and their only mission was to prove they were the number one tag team in the world. Now, Super Machine was portrayed by Bill Eadie, his name being a play on his previous known gimmick of the masked superstar, thus Super Machine, because Superstar Machine would have been a little too obvious. Although it was obvious to all the fans the Giant Machine was supposed to be Andre in a mask, commentators sold that it might in fact be Giant Baba and not Andre under the mask, which, at least height-wise, was not completely unheard of. Or that strange a concept, Giant Baba was quite a big man himself. In the following weeks leading up to the debut, Heenan made repeated claims the Giant Machine was Andre attempting to circumvent his suspension, which was technically the truth, but it's one of those great things about professional wrestling where baby faces are actually allowed to be rule breakers if it's for the sake of embarrassing much greater rule breakers in the heels. It's just the way wrestling goes. To illustrate the obviousness of such a ruse, Heenan would do an infamous interview on Jesse Ventura's Body Shop set, claiming to have introduced a new team from Korea, putting King Kong Bundy and Big John Studd with paper bags over their heads. Heenan's repeated claims led to Jack Tunney decreeing that if Giant Machine was revealed to be Andre, his suspension, which was still active, would become permanent, and thus Andre would never wrestle for WWF again. This leads us to August 5th, where the Machines made their WWF debut, with Super Machine wrestling in a singles match while Bono and Giant Machine were at ringside. Bobby Heenan would then sneak around ringside taking pictures of Giant Machine to try to prove his identity. 1 week later, Albano introduced a third Machine to the WWF, Big Machine, who was played by the well-known Blackjack Mulligan. As Andre's back issues were still bothering him at the time, Big Machine was brought in to make sure Andre's in-ring roles were not making his back problems any worse, so he would be able to wrestle when they really needed him. This is smart booking. You can have Andre at ringside, he can wow the crowd, people will still buy tickets to see Andre, but Andre's not risking his health. Ultimately, though, Studd and Bundy would continue to question the Machines being not who they say they are, claiming that being Japanese, they should not have a West Texas accent referring to Mulligan, and the other a New York accent referring to Bill Eadie. Heenan himself would refer to Giant Machine as, quote, "I know of no Japanese wrestler who weighs over 500 pounds and speaks with a French accent." Big Machine and Super Machine would wrestle most of the matches against the Heenan family, occasionally with Lou Albano joining them to face Bundy, Studd, and Heenan in 6-man tag team action. However, for the pure lulz of it, and to make it very clear that a large part of this angle was to mess with the head of heel manager Bobby Heenan, various other faces would don Machine masks for one-offs, such as George the Animal Steel becoming Animal Machine, and the obvious Hulk Machine competing in a match as well, as leading to, at the Boston Gardens, a kilt-wearing Piper Machine, and in the final bit of absurdity, at a house show in St. Paul, Minnesota, we had a one-time Crusher Machine being played by longtime Minnesota legend and icon, The Crusher, aka Reginald Lasowski. He even got the pin that night because, as we said, Minnesota legend. However, on October 28th, the Machines wrestled their last match in a loss to Bundy and Studd, which was also the last appearance of Lou Albano in the WWF for several years. Here's where things get fun. Although the match took place on October 28th, as with many things WWF did at the time, it was a pre-tape and the match did not air until November 23rd. 6 days later, on November 29th, it was announced Andre was reinstated. For the next several weeks, the mystery of why Andre the Giant was reinstated without Bobby Heenan having withdrawn his initial complaint publicly caused a lot of confusion among various interviewers and commentators. Ultimately, on an episode of Piper's Pit, it would be revealed that Andre the Giant's suspension was in fact lifted due to Bobby Heenan withdrawing his complaint. And that is because Bobby the Heenan had actually made a business deal with Andre the Giant, agreeing to lift the suspension so that Andre could challenge Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania 3. That's right, folks. The Machine's angle was ultimately used to help explain away not only Andre's heel turn, but his alliance with Bobby Heenan, even though last time he had been officially seen as Andre and unofficially seen as Giant Machine, he had been routinely feuding with Heenan and his cronies, while also playing into the fact that during this time, Heenan's cronies were also attempting to take the title off Hulk Hogan. Everything meshes together beautifully. Andre knows eventually he's going to get unmasked, and if he is, he's permanently suspended. That would be the end of his WWE career. Would you really want your WWE career to end without ever having been world champion? No, who would want that? But how can you get a world championship match? You have to get the complaint lifted. More importantly, you're going to need some help beating Hogan because Hogan's been world champion for many years now and has not been beaten despite some incredibly strong contenders. Well now, if Bobby were to remove the complaint and thus get the suspension lifted, then Andre could officially challenge for the World Championship. But Bobby's only going to do that if Andre winning the championship is done on behalf of the Heenan family. That's why they call him the Brain. Yep, that's right, folks. Everybody remembers WrestleMania 3. Everybody remembers that scene in Piper's Pit where Andre chastises Hogan for claiming to be his friend while never giving him an opportunity at the championship and then ripping the crucifix necklace that Hogan always wore. But most people did not remember what had been going on between WrestleMania 2 when Andre beat Big John Studd and that Piper's Pit that set up the official main event of WrestleMania 3. What happened was the Machines. The missing chapter. The prologue to one of the most iconic wrestling matches in American history. And with that, folks, that ties it all up. But does it? You see, that whole idea, well, we're going to throw in a little bonus here because this has been a little bit short for rambling. So we're going to throw a little bit of bonus here and say that the idea of a wrestler donning a mask to work around a suspension is itself not completely unheard of and had been utilized in various points of time throughout the years. There is the infamous Dusty Rhodes and the Midnight Rider. Wherein he, both in two different NWA territories, would get himself suspended only to return under a mask as the Midnight Rider, kick butt, take names, eventually get himself unmasked, but it's okay because by then he was allowed to compete as Dusty again. And let's be honest, hey, if it works for Dusty Rhodes, it can work for anybody else. But it was also used by Jimmy Valiant on multiple occasions where he would bill himself as under a mask as Charlie Brown from Out of Town. Get it? It kind of rhymes. Jimmy Valiant, of course, being one of the Valiant brothers, occasionally known as Handsy Jimmy Valiant, and a multi-time tag team champion, including in Championship Wrestling from Florida, which would later feature Dusty, who would do the Midnight Rider bid in Florida, as well as Georgia Championship Wrestling, which in one form or another would be the other territory where Dusty was the Midnight Rider. Ah, Dusty's walking down the trail that Jimmy Valiant blazed. Good times, good times. He would also hold the Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling title, and of course, would win championship gold in the WWF with Johnny Valiant. Good times, good times, good times. How can you not love it, folks? How can you not love it? And if you really want to bring it all together, folks, in the later 1960s in the WWA, aka World Wrestling Association, based out of Indianapolis, Jimmy Valiant was managed by Bobby Heenan. It all connects together. All the mass shenanigans connect together. Bobby Heenan had to deal with the Machines. Earlier in his career, Bobby Heenan managed Jimmy Valiant, who would pull the same trick as Charlie Brown from Out of Town. And the territories Jimmy Valiant would do in it would later feature Dusty Rhodes, who would pull the same trick as Midnight Rider. But Jimmy Valiant would also compete in the WWF, where the Machines took place once it dropped to W and became the WWF. And we're not quite done, folks, because remember what we said for a couple shows, the Hulk Machine showed up. Well, this is not the only time Hulk would play mass shenanigans, because in the 2000s, Hulk Hogan would run an angle where after feuding with Vince McMahon and being banned from the WWE, Hulk Hogan would return in a very obvious role as Mr. America. Oh, look at that. Hulk brought back the joke. Hulk brought back the joke as Mr. America, bringing the concept in to the 2000s. And in fact, let's see, what do we got? Let's see when exactly he would do that. Let's see. Let's get our exact years here. Come on. I know. That would be in 2003, where he would have the run as the Masked Mr. America. The joke being played on Mr. McMahon at this time. Ultimately, though, the feud would only run a few months due to Hulk Hogan quitting the WWE due to frustrations with the creative team, the Mr. America angle being dropped officially in storylines by Hogan at the end of a SmackDown show after the cameras turned off, unmasking himself to the live fans. As part of a celebratory, haha, we've continued to fool Vince moment. It's a thing. So, what do we have to say about the Machines? Well, they were part of a long-standing tradition of using masked identities to play shenanigans where the fans know who you are, commentators know who you are, but officially the heels can't prove it. And it is, as I said, the bridging point between feuds for Andre that also allowed him to work various tag matches and thus lighten his physical load so he was capable of performing in the ring against Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania 3 in a manner that was just enough to make that match a huge sellout anticipation thing that would go on to become, as we've said before, one of the most well-known matches in American wrestling history. Still, it's all good, and we're going to continue, without donning a mask, to come back every 7 days for the ramblings. I am your host, the Bardic One, and I will join you in 7, because there's always more entertainment to discuss. Bye-bye, folks.